Among its many struggles, the Bureau of Prisons has trouble retaining correctional officers and other employees. Recently, the Justice Department ended a long-running incentive pay plan, cutting officers and other employees' pay by up to 25%. The cuts are supposed to go into effect this month, and for a reaction and an update, we turn to the president of one Bureau of Prisons union local, Aaron McGlothin. Aaron, good to have you back.
Thank you, Tom. It's good to be here.
And what are your members saying or thinking? I mean, there have been some takeaways of that incentive pay here and there, but now it sounds like it's wholesale.
You know, unfortunately, right now we're in a position to lose quite a bit of staff due to these pay cuts. You know, we're essentially in the heart of Central California and the highest cost of living in the entire country. So when you cut somebody's salary by 25%, that makes a huge difference, and it forces people to seek other employment.
And what are you seeing? Are people starting to? Well, I mean, the pay cuts haven't taken effect just yet. Another couple of days, I guess, if another week or so. Are people talking about leaving, or has anyone actually left?
I did a poll amongst our staff, and I received several responses in regards to those that are preparing to leave federal service within the next 30 to 45 days. Some people are going back to their previous jobs. And what we're seeing mostly is the employees that have only been in the agency less than 3 years. Those are the ones that are, trying to make sure that they can make up that gap in that pay cut.
Right. And what about probationary employees? Did you have those among your ranks, and were some of them let go when the great riff of probationaries happened?
We've been pretty fortunate in the agency to not have a lot of probationary employees arbitrarily fired. You know, the agency's been crying for a long time that we're understaffed, so we need all hands on deck. But I will say that a lot of these probationary staff are going to be in a position to receive this retention that they were supposed to get after their year starts, and they're deciding to complete their year and seek employment elsewhere.
So complete their year to get the retention piece and then leave?
Well, the way it works with the agency is people get a hiring bonus when they sign on, and if they complete 1 year of service, they don't have to pay back any of that sign-on money that they took. So typically what happens after the year of employment, they would receive the retention incentive after that sign-on bonus goes away. But since people aren't going to be receiving that 25% retention, a lot of them are seeking employment elsewhere.
And the Bureau did, under Colette Peters, and she's, I guess, fighting in court to stay as the director of BOP, right? Because that's not a Senate-confirmed position. I guess I didn't realize that it was senior executive career to get appointed to the Bureau of Prisons. And she had closed several facilities, a couple of camps and a couple of full-blown correctional facilities. Did that make any effect on the availability of people to fill the open jobs elsewhere?
I think it's kind of one of those situations where the agency says either go to this other facility or you won't have a job. The actual RIF process, I don't see that happening in the agency. They're more of volunteering people on where to go. Either you report here or you're not going to have a job. And we've seen that, in the recent past with FCI Dublin. That happened to some members of management over there. They told them, hey, if you don't relocate to this institution, you're not going to have a job. But what you're seeing is, in the bigger picture, is a longstanding misappropriation of funds by the Bureau of Prisons leadership. We've seen millions of dollars in executive bonuses given out, just fraudulent trips. Recently we had some executive staff go to Hawaii. Several executive staff went to Hawaii for an institution. It's called a climate profile, where they interview staff and talk to individuals about how they feel about working at that facility. I was advised that several executives went, and you're costing tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars. I think the karma behind it is the fact that they all got emails letting them know that the Western Regional Office in Stockton is no longer going to be renewing its lease. So they're going to shut that place down.
Wow. We're speaking with Aaron McGlothin. He's president of Local 1237 of the American Federation of Government Employees, representing employees of the Federal Correctional Institution at Mendota, California. And let me ask this. When there is stress in the workforce, especially the correctional officers or those that get, temporarily assigned to that type of work, do the inmates, are they aware of it? And does that have any effect on the working conditions day to day when you're in contact or nearby the inmates?
Well, the one thing about the inmate population is they're very keen on what's going on. They're here at this facility 24/7, 365. So they key in on everything, and we always call it inmate.com, where, inmates are ear hustling, listening to what other staff are talking about, and they pick up on things really fast. One of the situations that we're dealing with as it comes to, the removal of this retention and our staffing issues is the agency misrepresented our staffing numbers at Mendota. They claim that we're at 95+%. Currently, we're at about 87% staffing. If we were so well staffed, then why have they shut down the food service department at the federal prison camp? It's been vacant for over a month, so now we have to satellite feed the inmates that are out there, and we don't know what time they're actually going to get their meals fed to them because the food comes from across the street. So, the agency's had a long standing of misappropriating funds, and there's been no oversight. The unions have fought for many years to seek additional appropriations from our Congress and Senate, which they've always given us that extra money, but nobody's actually kept tabs on where that money goes. So we've been shrouded in this cloud of mystery on these appropriations. And from what I'm hearing now, the agency is up to $500 million in the red. So they're scrambling to backpedal, and, they're cutting retentions, they're shutting down facilities. But I always say that as a small business owner, if you're not watching your bottom line, nobody is. And there's no oversight over the appropriations the Bureau gets. So it's a big question mark.
Right. And again, there's an acting director who is a career guy there, I believe. Any attention, and if you heard anything or any of your locals heard anything from, say, the Attorney General, which ultimately oversees the Bureau of Prisons, that they're looking at the situation there and the need for capital improvements? I know a lot of the places are in pretty bad shape physically.
It's actually been an extremely disheartening experience in the last 45 days when the deputy director announced his retirement. Several top executives decided they were going to, jump ship as well. So we're seeing the vast majority of the executive staff in the Bureau of Prisons and central office abandon ship. We have no leadership right now. Recently, the acting deputy director, Ms. Temin, went in front of the House Appropriations Committee and testified. Mind you, she's only been a Bureau employee for roughly a year. So how can you testify on the 120 prisons and the needs that we have if you've only been in your position in this agency for a year? I feel like the Attorney General's office has abandoned the agency, and they're just kind of scrambling to see what's going to come about. And we have no leader. We're on a ship right now with no charted course and no captain.
And what's your sense of what the wardens might be going through? I mean, they're the immediate managers for each of the locals at the different prisons, and they're kind of in the middle, I would think, between headquarters and the staff locally operating the prison day to day.
They're in the same boat. I know my warden in particular, he doesn't get much guidance at all. Like last time I talked to him a few days ago, he said that he hasn't heard from our regional office in several months. So it's kind of a fend for yourself type of situation. And luckily for us, we manage what we have with what we're given. But at some point, we're seeing a rise in augmentation. We're seeing
augmentation is when where like a nurse or a teacher or somebody else is pressed into being a correctional officer.
Correct. And that trickle-down effect is we're not able to offer these inmate programs under the First Step Act, which was, signed into law back in 2018. So it's always that snowball effect that trickles down to the lowest level, which is our inmate population, and we're not able to provide them with the programming. And there's just this big question mark over the agency on who's going to be the next leader. Are they going to hire somebody internally, or is it going to be an external source? We don't know.
Aaron McGlothin is president of Local 1237 of the American Federation of Government Employees, representing people at the Federal Correctional Institution at Mendota, California. As always, good to talk with you.
Yeah, good to talk with you too, Tom.
And we'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Hear the Federal Drive on demand. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.